All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Darius. So I'm a PhD student at the National University of Singapore. And this talk is about the design of a record and replay debugger, which is based on collecting execution traces of programs, hence the title. So debugging is a frequently mentioned pain point for OCaml users. Right? It was brought up several times in the last OCaml user survey 2 years ago. And I've also collected a lot of anecdotal evidence from talking to people over the last week. So since OCaml is such a wonderfully simple language, right? Debugging OCaml programs really shouldn't be so hard. The information is all there at runtime. It's just not really exposed. So the goal of this project is to make understanding OCaml programs easy and accessible. Right, so here we have the 3 debugging methods which are mentioned on OCaml.org. Right, and neither of them are really the best option in every situation. They all make trade-offs, mostly to do with the mode of interaction that they impose on users. Right, so trace works well if you have small functions and you can, and the inputs required to trigger problems are small and you can just provide them at the top level. But it's not great when you want to test, for example, an AST transformation, where you have to provide the entire AST. And then there's OCaml debug, which is nice in that it provides like reverse execution, but it suffers from the same problems that all interactive debuggers suffer from, which is that you are kind of limited to traversing that single line of execution, and you can't do things like you can't evaluate code, right? That's a technical limitation with OCaml debug. And printf is by far the most common debugging method for everyone, right? Simply because it always works. So the JHCI debugger paper calls this accessible, right? It is always available under all circumstances at full functionality. That's why, yeah, so it's very flexible. But of course, the downside is that you have to manually instrument your program with printers, right? So the question is, would something that combines all 3 approaches sort of mitigate the downsides, right? Could we have a nice nice tool to unify all these 3 approaches, where we can navigate back and forth in time freely, and we can see every data structure in any format we want, and maybe also get an overview of the execution of the program. So this points to a record and replay debugging approach like RR, right? With the following workflow. So first, we instrument the program to collect interesting events, right? Things like function calls and returns, which include their argument values and their return values. Next, we run the program and record a trace, and then we use some tools to figure out what the program is doing by querying the trace offline. So I prepared a short demo here of the tool in action. So here we just have a small program which it's just a bunch of random functions, and we know that there is a problem in this insertion sort implementation. Right, so the first step is to build the project, and you can see that there are 3 invocations to Dune. So the first one records execution, and the next 2 actually interpret the execution and produce some kind of representation of the trace. So this is one visualization we can use, which is the Perfecto or Magic Trace UI. And you can see like the structure is very clear. And also we have the arguments and return value, which is not something you can get with Magic Trace, which uses perf under the hood. So next we will query the execution. So we can do this using like very simple command line tools like grep. So here we're just looking for any anomalies, and we find that there is some suspicious behavior here. So insert seems to insert items into the list in the wrong order. So to start, we load up the trace, right? And we can jump straight to that point in the execution by just supplying the number. So 369 is the point of like that call happening. And then once we have the context, it's very obvious what the problem is. We can just fix it, right? And then we can rebuild the project and check the call again, and we see that the problem is gone. And we can also look at other functions like the sort function just as a sanity check to make sure that like it actually works properly. So we can continue exploring the trace, right? For example, we can navigate backwards. So that's where we were, right? And let's say we navigate backwards to this depth call. So we move backwards, and now we're at the point after the pipeline operator has returned, right? So stepping back from this brings us to the point where after depth has returned, and we can move backwards and forwards, right? And stepping back from here brings us to where depth, before it began, right? So stepping forward from here, again, brings us into depth. And then we can see all the values in context. We can see like the scrutiny of the match, right? And we can tell which branch it went into. And then stepping forward from here, although we can't go into library functions, we can go into higher order functions. So we can tell that this is the end of the list, right? The first part, the first call that a write forward does. So from here, we have another recursive call, and then we see that this is we are at the end of, like, at a leaf in the tree, and we can see what branch we enter. Right? So this is an artificial example, but it's representative of the type of workflow that you would use for just navigating around a program freely, right? Without having already gained like an overview from the visualization. So how does it work, right? The main difficulty is in the first step, which is instrumenting programs to produce traces. So in its most basic form, all we are doing is instrumenting functions to make the program record like a span of execution, right? So we just insert like a function call, two function calls using PPX before the function runs, so we can see its arguments and after it returns. And if we have recursive functions, the transformation is a bit more involved. So firstly, we open the recursion by making the recursive call parameter, and then we define an auxiliary function which sort of ties the knot again, right? After recording the span of execution. So this is fine, but we have a problem because we can't actually write this. We can't actually compile this code, right? Because OCaml' does not have a mechanism for ad hoc polymorphism, and we cannot assume that there is a module in scope which provides like an implementation of this function. And we also can't get users to pass the printer manually here because we want to apply this transformation to potentially the whole program so that we can explore it freely. So there is a solution involving a typed PPX transformation. But right before I talk about that, I'll just cover like the basic workflow of a typical PPX. Right. So given some compilation unit, right, the workflow starts with pre-processing and then type checking and then code generation, and we get an executable. Right. So importantly, we can't use type information in the pre-processing phase because of how it's sequenced this way. So there is an alternative approach which has been used by a bunch of libraries like typepx and typepxlib. So this takes advantage of the fact that PPX rewriters can do arbitrary things, including running the type checker. Right. So these plugins actually type check the code once. They then use the type information to transform the original file, and then this is returned from the PPX, right? And then that gets type checked again for just for sanity before being compiled. So the upside is that this allows the instrumentation to go through, but it's kind of a hack, right? Because having the type check twice isn't great. It doesn't perform well, and in practice also requires vendoring a copy of the type checker, which is kind of fragile. So there's no PPXlib to protect us against like breaking changes to the type tree and stuff like that. So in general, we can't really, I think it's difficult to avoid this overhead, but like there is a recurring theme in all the talks today, which is that we're looking at a special case, right? So again, we have a specific case here. When we can sort of stratify the program into the parts of the program which produce such values which require like typed preprocessing from the parts which consume such values, we can stage compilation and kind of work around this problem without requiring like type checking again. So here's the new pipeline, right? So the first stage of compilation just follows the usual workflow. We just run the PPX, right? And instead of using show, which is polymorphic, we use like Marshall. So we just produce a binary trace. And this is not this can't be enough because we can't reconstruct the structure of values from this binary trace, since OCaml erases types, and we can't tell in general, like from the runtime representation, what the value used to be. Which is why we have a second stage. So this stage builds a second executable, right? And it uses a second PPX to actually act on the type information computed in the first stage. Right? And we're able to do this because of this stratification. And then when compiled, this takes the binary trace as input and produces a human readable trace. So this is actually what we do in the demo that you saw. And like this is inspired by how like compact trace formats, like a common trace format, they separate the content of trace events from the schema. So here, in our case, the content is the value and the schema is the type. And so we're able to separate, since we can separate these two things, we can reconstruct, interpret the binary trace later on. So in the remainder of the time, I'll discuss some trade-offs that this makes, right? So the first is that this is turning debugging from a runtime problem into a build problem, right? Because now it's just a matter of inserting this pipeline into the build system. So the downside of this is that code must be recompiled to be instrumented, right? Which is unlike magic trace. But it is hopefully like it's a one-time investment, right? You just set up the thing at the beginning and then you can use it afterwards. So also because code has to be recompiled, third-party libraries can't be instrumented. But we can see the outputs at the boundary with user code. So this isn't too bad. Next, there are still some users of fragile like internal like APIs which are unstable, but we are just looking at the CMT file format and the type tree and not vendering a copy of the type checker, which so sorry, one might wonder if the stage build is just a workaround for the lack of ad hoc polymorphism, right? Because it seems that way, but I think separating content from schema, just like the common trace format does, is worth doing even if you have a means of inserting the right printers, right? Because this reduces the overhead at runtime from maintaining the metadata along in the trace, and also the compile time overhead. So you don't have to, it's easy to disable the second stage since they are just two executables. Finally, the main problem with approaches like this in the past is always scalability, right? Because we can't record every single function call in a cheap way and expect our program to run with like normal speed. So I've been sort of dealing with this by providing a lot of configuration for the instrumentation process, so we can control exactly what is instrumented, which is fine because in a debugging approach, we are like you also don't want to be able to, or rather the developer only needs to look at certain parts of needs to identify the parts of the code which could be problematic, and we can just specify that. So how does this compare to other debugging methods beyond the default ones on OCaml.org? Right, so firstly, testing and logging and like things like runtime events, I would say that this system is complementary to those. So testing and logging, the distinction with this approach is that in those cases, we know what we're looking for, right? We know what is important. We have the developer identifies those parts, and here this is more exploratory. So we don't know where a bug could be, and we just want to see all the context around it so that we can tell where it is. Next, GDB, RR, and dtrace all kind of fall in the same category of being mature tools for which OCaml support is not yet there. It is difficult to understand, or rather dtrace doesn't understand the format of OCaml native code. And GDB, for example, there used to be a project which also looked at CMT files, but it was a lot of work, right? So I think the main benefit of this approach over the other ones is that this takes a more top-down approach where it is very easy to see that the semantics of the program being debugged is preserved, right, rather than having to map backwards from the compiled output. So that would be one benefit. There are also several special purpose interpreters like OCaml'22 and Furukawa's stepper, right, which actually display the individual reductions in OCaml program. So I think these are really nice, but it takes a lot of support to re-implement an interpreter for the entire language. So neither of these do that. And finally, magic trace, right? I guess the difference with magic trace is that magic trace is not able to see all the parameter values, the argument values, and whereas it is very good at getting an overview of the third-party parts of your code, right? All the way down to the system calls. Oh, I should also mention Het, which is a very old project, which operated in a similar way. So Het worked for Haskell, which is, and it was much more difficult. This problem is much more difficult in Haskell, right? So in OCaml, we don't suffer from all the same issues which Het had, which are that. Mostly because OCaml was strict by default. And for example, we don't require external libraries to be instrumented for this to work. All of OCaml is supported. And we don't require the program being debugged to terminate in order to produce some output. So the implementation I showed is very much a proof of concept. I think there are many things which have not been implemented, but I hope to continue on this and make it a practical debugging tool. So for it to get there, I think the next step would be to validate the workflow on many different kinds of projects and see what works and what is needed. So if anyone is interested in trying to do this, please come and talk to me. There is also much more that could be done to make the framework easier to use and to understand traces. So two ideas I have now are backward slicing to figure out where a value came from, for example, to answer questions like those, as well as to evaluate code. So we can potentially open a top level at a certain point in the trace, right, and then explore from there. Finally, debugging concurrent programs is fundamentally a very different problem. I'm not sure how much this will help, but I think it would be a useful thing to explore, like recording a trace and seeing how we can, recording a trace of a concurrent program and seeing how we can slice it up to figure out what is going wrong. So the project is not up there yet, but I will put it up there on the URL. That's all. Thank you.